So I want to talk briefly about putting this end piece on. What we've done is we've screwed the two pieces of pine on the top and bottom, but we've only done it to the 4x8 sheet and the other 8-foot length. This piece is still free, as you can see. So what's important, you finagle this however you can, but get this thing up underneath. You're going to have to glue underneath here and then set this back down. What is really critical is that you get it as flush to this edge and that you also get this red on red down here. Now if you've cut all your sheets, don't worry, but I'm just saying get that as close as you can there, clamp it, and then we're going to screw this small piece on. So just like before, I come in a little bit, and this has already been pre-glued. And since this is a brand new piece, I'm going to throw a few extra screws on this one because it's kind of floating out by itself. And remember again, this is only to keep these pieces in place because you've put a liberal amount of glue on this lumber. Now, cautioning you again, when you go to the end here, don't get too close, you'll split that lumber. So just make sure you come in about 1.5 inches on that, and your pine should stay intact. And if it doesn't, don't lose your mind, we're going to be okay. Let's go do the other side. So the next element we want to talk about is we've just glued and screwed this lumber onto this cap piece. I want to make sure that you look at this intersection and make sure that all of those are nice and snug and tight and square. So that's going to be you just arranging the lumber a little bit and making sure that things look right, okay? And then once that's all tight, we'll go ahead and screw on that other piece. Okay folks, same routine. If you've got a little bit of an anomaly out here or bends in your lumber, don't worry about it. Again, we're going to fix all of that. First of all, glue it underneath like you've already done and like I've already done. And then we're going to do the same to this end like we did to the other end. Remember, hold it off at least about 1 inch because we're going to be cutting into this to square everything. Going to recess these screws. Feel, got a really good bite on that. Throw one in the center here. And then again, reminding you, just hold it off that end so that you don't get a split in that pine. And there you go, we have step 1 completed. And now we're going to put the ends of the pine on the very ends of the hose flag. So from your laundry list or the materials list that I've already provided for you, you're going to take essentially this, I believe what it's called is a 1x8, but in actuality, again, it's 3/4 inches by 7 1/4. You're going to take this piece and you're going to slide it in here and you're going to make a tick mark down here and you're going to cut it to fit. Now remember guys, we're not making a piano here, but you're going to want to still get this as close as you can. Now let me give you one cautionary note when you go to measure this. When you put this in here, make sure that these two pieces of plywood are as snug as you can get them, okay? Because that's going to be really important. So using your pencil that you've got, just go ahead and make a tick mark here. And again, just get it as close as you can. And we'll go ahead and cut that off. From that original mark, which I made my tick mark, I'm going to go ahead and just put my adjustable square in here. You can see I've already marked it. But just to demonstrate again, I want to bring that piece up. And that's just based on how I like to cut because I'm right-handed. And then I'm going to transfer this along and just give myself a marking space out here for my saw blade. Now remember, the kerf on your blade is 1/16 of an inch, so always account for that when you're cutting. I go back nice and firm against my fence, and then I get ready to cut. You can see I just adjust right in. And you know, I had a friend once who said every time I cut that board, it was too short. All right. So let's go ahead and cut this down to size. And like everything in this world, please be safe, all right? Okay, let's go ahead and see how we did. And there you go, nice and clean. Let's go ahead and glue it and screw it into place, just like we did the top and the bottom. All right, guys, no different than what we did before. We're gonna make sure we got as close to an edge as we can right there. I've already glued the board itself, and we're gonna go ahead and just clamp it down and get that nice and snug. Again, be really cautious of this. When you go to glue this down, make sure you pull this in as tight as you can to make sure that that seam is as tight as it can be. And then clamp. Again, don't worry if your lumber is not exactly flush, because remember, we're gonna build this to a rough dimension, and then we're gonna cut everything back to a final dimension, and that'll give us really nice edges for our frame. And you know the routine by now, start gluing and screwing. All right, guys, you're seeing a little bit of a different screw pattern here. Again, it's a little bit arbitrary, but due to the fact we have a wider plank, I'm just going side-by-side screws. One thing I would suggest is anytime you have a seam in the lumber, make sure that you go on either side of it. And again, just a reminder, because we're going to be cutting back that edge, make sure that that outside screw is held off a little bit, maybe an inch or more. Okay, for the other side, we're basically going to wash, rinse, and repeat. So put that piece of lumber in. Find your tick mark again. Transfer that tick mark up to the top of the piece. So I'm going to take my adjustable square and just walk it around. And again, this is just to give me a reference point for my blade on my chop saw. Okay? All right, again, my hand is not on the trigger. And I'm going to make sure I get my adjustment down here. Just going to feather it in. Then my fingers are clear for safety. Everyone's clear. And folks, there's an example of what I was talking about holding that screw off. This is not a moment to panic. The integrity of the project is not lost. You can either, if you're really super crazy about this, cut a new piece of lumber, or don't worry about that, throw some more glue in there and just come inboard a little bit. Remember, this is just about holding this down for the glue to set. All right, well, congratulations. You've got the first step done. As you saw, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? We just took 3 pieces of plywood and we framed it with some pine, and we just glued and screwed it in. Again, refer to your dimensions to make sure that your rough dimension is accurate, but had you cut your original base pieces to the length that I suggested, you should be right on or close enough. Next, we're going to put the cleat in here. This is going to be the actual piece of lumber that glued and screwed to the flag is what's going to hold the flag to the wall. On your list of materials, this is the 1x12, which is obviously not 1x12, but it's a 3/4 inch piece of pine. And what I've done, if you look down the end here, is I put it on my table saw and I gave it about a 35 to 40 degree, even you could go so much as a 45 degree cut. And that runs the full length of this product. Now, what we're going to do, like we did with the end pieces, is we're going to set it into place and make sure that one of the factory ends is nice and clean, and if it's not, you can cut it yourself. And then we're going to go down here and we're going to do that tick mark just like we've done before. So now I'm looking right here and I just see that gap right there again, so I just want to get it kind of close. Again, don't get so close that you got to recut 2 and 3 times. You just want to get it really close in there. Okay, just like the end pieces, let's go ahead and slide this in and then drop it down. Now, one thing that's very important that you have to remember, and I've made the grievous mistake in my life of not doing it, make sure that that beveled edge right there is pointing down, so that when you mount that piece of cleat on the wall, that piece of cleat is going to slide into it and hook right up in there. So, installed properly, the bevel should be going from the furthest side back in. You see that? Same procedure, glue and screw. In order for your project to be safe, and when you hang it on the wall, I've designed it with a cleat that's very, very substantial. Now, when you factor in the weight of the wood, the trim, the framing, the actual weight of the hose, it's not a light piece of artwork. With that, we're going to glue and screw that 1 foot wide by 8 foot long cleat. And this is going to get glued and screwed to the back of the entire project. And with that on the wall, this thing will go nowhere. You've noticed here that I've held this back because I don't want to get that screw down into that cleat area, okay? So I'm going to start on one end, and like all the other parts, I'm going to hold it off a little bit so as not to split the wood. So what you'll notice is sometimes there's some imperfection in the pine or the lumber that you get. The lower the grade lumber you get, the more anomalies that you'll see. So as you notice down here, I glued and screwed the end of it, but I'm starting to get some separation here because of the wood has a natural tendency to crown. So what I'm going to do here in this situation, I'm not even worried about this cleat edge, because even if it gets slightly damaged, it will not work. You don't have to worry about the integrity of the overall project. What I'm trying to do is close that gap right there with this clamp. And so I just use a nice strong clamp, and that'll bring this guy right in. And once he's in, I can continue to glue and screw. Okay, we've got the cleat on and we've got all the perimeters on. Now let me direct you to this little piece of lumber here. We've got some weakness here in the center of our piece. So I want you to take some OSB that you have left over from the second sheet, and you need to cut 2 pieces, and it's going to be the same deal. You're just going to cover this entire section. I want you to hold off about 6 to 9 inches right in here. So as you can see, we've got everything finished for the back of the project. We've done all the perimeter lumber, and I placed this piece down and this second piece down just to reinforce the seams on the inside of the flag. And once you get to this point, we're going to go ahead and flip it over.